You ever been tired, just exhausted, just wore out? It's more of a rhetorical question because all of us at some point in our life, we're just tired. Things are not going the way they're supposed to go. Things are not going the way that we had hoped that they would go, and we're just tired. We're frustrated. We're worn out. That's the way the Israelites found themselves. In Exodus chapter 17, they found themselves in an unwanted fight. The Israelites, group of people who was just feeling greatly distressed by this point. They were discouraged. They were tired. They were worn out. They were beaten up. We know this by their complaining. The more beaten up and the more tired they are, the more that they begin to complain. It's like Grace when she gets tired. She gets grumpy and whiny and complaining. Israelites were complaining. And they threw a firestorm of complaints when they realized there was no water for the people to drink. Let's go ahead and open up in Exodus chapter 17, starting with verse 1. It says this. All the congregation of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin by stages, according to the commandments of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirst there for water. And the people grumbled against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried to the Lord, "What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" They were tired. They were worn out. They were discouraged. And oftentimes when we're discouraged, when we're tired, we ask the same question. Is God among us or not? I mean, it's easy for us at this point in time to really beat up on the Israelites, to say that we would never do such a thing like that. But when times get hard, when life is difficult, when we're discouraged, when we're at rock bottom, oftentimes these questions come up. Where is God? I mean, why can't I ever find Him when I need Him the most? If you ever read through the book of Psalms, you'll see David felt the same way. "Hear me, O Lord," he would say. There's just those times in our life that we question, that we wonder. The Israelites, they were tired, they were hungry, they were thirsty, so they questioned whether God even cared about the situation that they were in. And that's when they suffered this unwanted attack. In verse 8, it goes on and says, "Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim." I mean, isn't that just how life is? I mean, when you're tired, when you're worn out, when you're at rock bottom, somebody hands you a shovel and say, "Keep digging." Life's hard. When we don't think we can take any more, that's when something else will come up. But fortunately for Moses and the Israelites, God was still among them. In fact, they were about to experience the power and the provision of God. They were about to experience Yahweh Nissi, the Lord is my banner. And they were about to experience an unconventional victory. When Amalek attacked Moses, Moses knew this was a situation that he wasn't going to be able to run from. He wasn't going to be able to hide. They wasn't going to be able to get out of this situation. They was going to have to fight. Even though they were down, even though they were tired, even though they were discouraged. So Moses gave instruction to Joshua, his military commander, and he says this: "Choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the hill, or the top of the hill, with the staff of God in my hand." It doesn't really seem like the best battle plan, does it? Joshua, you get your best men, you go in the valley and fight. I'll go on top of this mountain and I'll hold a staff in the air. From a human perspective, that's not a very good battle plan. So obviously there must be something more that's going on. Something more than we can see. So the next day, Moses climbs the mountain. While Joshua and the Israelites, they're engaged in battle with Amalek, Moses held up the staff. Interesting, it tells us that as long as Moses held the staff in the air, the Israelites would prevail. They would be winning the battle. But when Moses' arm would get weak and the staff would come down, then Amalek would begin to prevail over Israel. I mean, this pattern, it shows us that this battle that they were facing isn't entirely a physical battle. I mean, they were a supernatural element that was involved in this fight. And it had something to do and a connection with Moses' staff. The reason that Moses' staff was so important was that God had sanctified it. It was the same staff that had turned into a snake, that had ushered in the plagues, that brought water from the rock, that split the sea. The staff had become a symbol in which God would display His power to the people. Moses, he was involved in a spiritual battle on top of that hill. And spiritual battles, they can be exhausting. As Moses continued to hold the staff high, his hands began to grow weary. He started to lose his strength. But fortunately, he had people around him. As Moses' strength would fade, Aaron and Hur stood beside him to help hold his hands up, ensuring the victory for God's people. Don't ever think that you have to face the trials of this life on your own. In fact, don't ever think that you can face the trials of this life on your own. It's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that God created the church. I mean, it provides for us a place that we can find Aaron's and hers in our life, in our times of need. But it's not always easy to ask for help. It's not always easy to ask for prayer. It's easy for me to ask for prayer for somebody else. It's hard for me to ask you to pray for me. Because then you get to see my weaknesses. Then you get to see my vulnerabilities. It's hard for us to ask for help. It's hard for us to ask for prayer, but we need to push that pride to the side because we can't go through these battles that we face in this life on our own. We need help. We need each other. When the battle was over, the Israelites had come through victoriously. And Moses knew that something important had just taken place. understood that God had done something new. Appropriately, he responded in worship. Verse 15, it says, Moses built an altar and called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner." In Hebrew, it's Yahweh Nissi. It's another name for God. Yahweh Nissi, the Lord is my banner. Today we associate a banner with a flag. It's a piece of material that's put on display. But in biblical times, a banner could refer to a number of items. A banner most of the time meant that you were fighting under somebody's authority. In this case, under God's authority. So to approach God as Yahweh Nissi is to look toward Him as your source of power, of strength, of deliverance. The Lord is my banner means that God has made Himself evident and available for those who will look to Him in their need. It's true that most Christians today don't have experience with anything like Moses' staff. We don't have a physical banner that helps us to focus on God's presence and access to His power. Yet God has still given us a banner. A banner to use each day to deal with the realities and with the challenges that we face in life. And Jesus is our banner. But before we can fully appreciate Jesus as our banner, we need to discover another important principle that's revealed to the Israelites in their victory over Amalek. The Israelite battle with Amalek was a strange combination between natural armies and a supernatural intervention. On the one hand, Joshua and the Israelite soldiers, they had a role to play. They had to go down into the valley and they had to fight. But on the other hand, the outcome wasn't solely dependent upon their efforts. The Israelites could achieve victory only as long as Moses was standing on the mountain overlooking the battle with the staff in the air. In other words, the battle was a mixture between spiritual and physical warfare. And usually when we talk about spiritual warfare, we go to one extreme or the other. There's some people who will only fight on the mountain. They will say, well, I'll give this over to God. I'll be so in tune with God, so in touch with God, that God will just take care of every single thing that happens in my life. Anything bad, God will take care of that for me. The other extreme is those who seek to fix all of their problems on their own. I'm capable enough. I'm strong enough. I can fix this. I can handle this. I can do this. They look to themselves. But the truth is somewhere in the middle. You bring both the valley and the mountain together if you ever want to experience victory in your life. As a believer and follower of Christ, you have a responsibility to do whatever you can to address the situation that you're facing in life. But unless you rely on God and His strength, we will not be victorious. There are legitimate moments in life when God instructs us just to wait, to be still and know that He is God. But there's also those moments in life that God is waiting for us to do something. You may have heard the fictional story about the man when a flood had come. Now the flood was getting pretty high that he would had to start swimming, and a boat came by and said, "I can save you." The man said, "No, God will save me." Well, the water got a little bit higher, so he went to the second floor. A boat came through again and said, I can save you. He says, no, God will save you. Flood gets a little bit higher. He goes to the roof. A helicopter comes by, says, I can save you. He says, no, God will save me. And then he drowns. And he gets to heaven and he says, God, I have faith in you that you was going to save me. And God said, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. What do you expect? There are times in our life that God expects us to do something. But we have to rely on Him for the strength to succeed. Our Nissi today, our banner today, is Jesus. He's our banner. Whoever looks to Him will have access to God's supernatural power of salvation. So before you give up, look up. Fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Our Nissi. Your victory has already been won. Jesus has already enabled you to triumph because He has already defeated Satan for His work on the cross. And that makes us much more than just conquerors, no matter what happens in our life. Christ is our banner today. It doesn't matter how good you are. Doesn't matter how much you try, how much effort that you put into it. You can't do it on your own. Salvation only comes from Him. Our strength to face whatever we may face in this life, the strength only comes from Him. Apart from Him, we can do nothing. But join with Him, we are more than conquerors. So if you need Him today,